when you're studying the Bible, you need to try to put yourself in the environment in which it was written. And so when I was meditating on this, I'm trying to understand where Solomon is writing from. Solomon, before he became king, God had already said that he would give him peace and rest on all sides. That's in 1 Chronicles 22 verse 9, which means that Solomon reigned and raised his children in a season of abundance, peace, and prosperity, which when you think about it, must have been a hard thing to do. This is like being the wealthiest person in the world. And now you have to teach your child how to be a good steward of resources when that child has grown up in an environment of abundance. It's like, how do you train a child to anticipate war when all he has known is peace? How do you train a child to plan for the rainy day when all he has seen is sunshine? This must have been an interesting season for Solomon. You know, if a lot of people don't realize there's pros and cons to everything in life. There are people who say, oh, I grew up in a poor family. I wish we had money. But they don't realize that the environment that you grew up in actually helps shape your character to be able to sustain the riches when you did get it. There are other people who grew up in rich homes and you don't realize that character is not easily forged unless your parents are intentional in ensuring that the money and the resources that you have access to doesn't get to your head. How do you train a child? Because it is in adversity that character is forged. In prosperity, how do you train the next king? And so I believe the content or this context could give us some insight into what actually motivated Solomon to write this letter to his son. Because again, growing up in a palace where gold and silver were common, it would have been easy to believe that resources were unlimited. You can imagine Rehoboam is probably of the mindset that there's always more where that came from. And so again, we're in verse 1 where Solomon is warning his son about the dangers of becoming a guarantor to his friends and strangers. Why is Solomon saying this? Remember, Solomon is king at this point. He probably understood that in his position as king, relationships mattered. It is how he built his kingdom. It is how he became prosperous. Instead of fighting with nations, he built bridges with them. He had relationships with them. And so Solomon, in this relationship building exercise, must have learned a lesson or two. And he must have learned this lesson the hard way. Imagine being king. Your friends are not mere men. Your friends are the wealthy in society, the noble, business men and women of substance. These were the elites. He also had acquaintances with people from all over the world. So you can imagine he had foreign business partners, people who were at the upper echelons of society, people who were moving huge businesses, big deals. So you can imagine one of these, his wealthy friends, wants to maybe expand their business and they go to a lender for money. You know, we're looking to expand. We need XYZ. We're going to pay back. And when they go to the lender is like, well, I see where you are going, but you don't have enough collateral because what you are asking for is a bit too risky for my appetite. And your collateral is not enough to back this business venture that you're about to get into. And so when situations like that happen, you need someone to guarantee, someone who is of a higher status, who is wealthier, who is more notable, to stand in the gap for you in the eyes of the lender. Someone who is able to provide a collateral, a name, someone who is able to act as leverage. And so a lot of these people may have seen an opportunity. Their proximity to Solomon, the king, their relationship that they built with him, they may have seen that as an opportunity to leverage his position, to borrow money. And because they had the seal of the king, when they came to the lender with the seal, like, Solomon has backed us. They're like, whoa, that's the leader of one of the most prosperous nations in the world. You got it. We'll give you the money because now you've given us the guarantee that someone who we trust, someone who we know has the resources, has chosen to stand in your stead. If you're not able to pay back, at least we are guaranteed that he's going to be able to pay back on your behalf. But at some point, Solomon must have learned a lesson because I'm sure at some point there must have been a default. One of the people that he stood in the gap for must have defaulted on a payment. And I can imagine the lenders coming to Solomon. Maybe they've gone to the person. The guy's like, I don't have it, man. Give me 6 months. They give the person 6 months. The 6 months, the guy's like, I don't have it, man. They're like, yo, we need our money back. How did we even give this guy? Solomon stood as, okay, let's go to Solomon then. And I can imagine they go to Solomon for payment. And Solomon is like, what do you mean? Like, they're responsible for paying you. And they're like, well, they're not able to pay. and you stood as a guarantor. And so you are the one who is responsible for making this payment. And Solomon is like, what? Let me call my friend. Solomon speaks to his friend. Those ones are giving him excuses. We don't have it, man. Like we thought, give us another 4 weeks, give us another 8 weeks. They're making promises. And Solomon is like, Solomon keeps on calling and calling, and they keep giving him excuses. Solomon as king at some point will be like, come on, man. Like I can't keep chasing these guys. I'm the king of this nation. I can't keep chasing these people to pay up their debt. And Solomon must have understood at some point that if they say I'm owing, it's as good as saying Israel is owing. The reputation of my nation is at stake. And so is it possible that at some point Solomon is just like, I'll pay it? And it's possible that this may have happened so many times that Solomon is like, you know what? We can't keep going like this. I need to find a way to escape from these kinds of agreements should they come up again. And so he must have learned something, because in verse 1 to 5, it feels like Solomon has found a solution to the problem of being a guarantor for someone. How do you escape once you've already agreed, once you've already stood in the gap for someone? So he's now telling his son, my son, if you become surety for your friend, if it's a condition, you don't always have to, but if you do, if you have shaken hands in pledge for a stranger, he says you are snared by the words of your mouth, which means you are trapped. Whatever you have said has trapped you. He says you are taken by the words of your mouth. So he's saying there's nothing you can do. Verse 3 now says, so do this, my son, and deliver yourself. There's a huge revelation in this, guys. It says, for you have come into the hand of your friend. You see, before your friend needed you. Now your friend has you in his hands. Even though he's owing, you are the one who is now on the hook for his actions or his inactions. He now says, go and humble yourself. Remember, Solomon is king. As king, you may be feeling, man, I'm too big to be running around chasing people who owe me for money. Solomon said, bruh, put your crown down. Humble yourself. Become like your friend. Don't allow your position to cloud your judgment, especially because you owing is the same as Israel owing. It's a reputational thing. Think of the world that we live in today. Everything is based on your reputation. The reason why we have a credit score that gives us the ability to borrow from the bank is based on our reputation. You are able to pay your debts. If people start going around saying, man, Solomon hasn't paid us, whoa, that is gonna negatively impact your reputation. As king, make sure when you stand in surety for someone and they are not able to pay, he says, go and humble yourself. Don't say because you're king, you're too big to chase your friend. He now says in verse 2, in the second part, plead with your friend. You see, when you see plead with your friend, this is why English, if you just read the Bible in English, you're going to miss the meaning behind a lot of things. Because when you see plead with your friend, it feels like Solomon is saying, go and beg your friend. But in the original language, in the Hebrew, plead actually means, it's a word called rahab, which means to urge severely, to harass persistently, to beset or to capture. Go and meet your friend. Go and harass the friend persistently. Urge them severely. Solomon is saying, yo, you can't, like, once you've already agreed, you can't do anything about the agreement except you get your friend to fulfill their part of it. Verse 4 says, give no sleep to your eyes, which means do this urgently. No slumber to your eyelids. Look at what it says. Deliver yourself like a gazelle from the hand of a hunter. He now uses an example, a relatable example, that when a hunter catches a gazelle, the gazelle doesn't start negotiating. It doesn't start begging the hunter. The only way the gazelle can leave the hunter's hand is if the gazelle begins to move with urgency. Have you seen when they catch a rabbit and the rabbit is trying to leave? It is using its entire strength to try to get out of the hands of the one who has captured it. That's the only way to come out. You cannot negotiate with your captor. It says like a bird from the hand of the fowler. The only way to live is by acting with urgency. But there was something I saw here. Now, do you realize that Jesus stood as a guarantor for man? God stood as a surety for man when he created him. Think about that. And even though God stood as a surety for man, when man fell and became indebted to God, God could not, I told you guys, verse 3, go and humble yourself. God was in agreement. He took a surety for man. I'm standing in the gap for man. Hebrews 7:22 says, because of this oath, Jesus has become the guarantor of a better covenant. He has become a surety for a better covenant. And the only way that Jesus could save us from it, because he ended up paying our debts, but he didn't do it in his capacity as God, he had to go and humble himself. There was no way that equation could be balanced, because Solomon is giving us a principle here. When you have made a declaration, you are trapped by your words. God has esteemed his word over his name. This is why when God made that declaration in Genesis 2, that in the day that you eat of this fruit, you will surely die, God trapped himself with that word. The only way that God could come out of that was that man had to pay the debt. So God had to humble himself to become a man, so that as a man, he could pay the debt that was owed. You are trapped by the words of your mouth. The only way, Solomon is saying, for you to escape, to deliver yourself, is that you can't go and negotiate with the lender. You can't go and negotiate with death, with the justice system. You have to go and make sure that your friend, the one who you stood in the gap for, pays the price. And so God had to go and humble himself to become a man, because there was no way his creation could pay the debt. So God had to humble himself, become a man, fulfill the entire law, pay the debt. And that's how God has delivered himself from that pledge, which is why we no longer die, we now live. But I believe practically, prevention is better than cure. It's better not to stand in the gap or act as a guarantor for someone versus acting as a guarantor and trying to deliver yourself from it, because that's a whole mess, especially if it's a family member, a close friend. You have stood in the gap for this person. Now this person cannot pay. It's going to threaten to ruin your relationship. And so some practical things that we can do is you can help people without risking bondage. One of the ways that we do that is, for example, if someone comes to me and asks for money, they have a business idea, they want to do something, can I stand in the gap for them? Maybe they've gone to the bank and now they're asking for a guarantor, or they need rent, or they need they need to rent somewhere, and they're asking me to become a guarantor for them. One way to help without risking bondage is to give them money that you're prepared never to get back. A lot of you know this. Someone is asking you for $50,000 or something because you want to start a business. You're like, I don't have 50K, but I can give you 1K. You don't have to pay back. You released yourself, as opposed to giving them the 50K, expecting the payback. They're unable to pay back, and now you're stuck. God had to humble himself. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this clip and you'd like to watch the entire Bible study session, make sure you click this link here. And if you've been blessed by this channel in any way you feel led to support, please consider clicking the link below. And for any amount you give, you get a free Bible study masterclass where I teach you how to unlock the 3 dimensions of the word. Literally, I'm going to be teaching you how to study the Bible in 3D. If you also feel led to support us on a monthly basis, consider becoming a member of the YouTube channel, where you get some exclusive perks as well, like becoming a part of our monthly book club. Thanks again for watching, and God bless you. See you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.